Hello there, my name's Tanner, and I'd like to welcome you back to my YouTube channel. Now, I bet you're probably wondering, hey Tanner, what happened to the cardigan? Listen, where I'm from, the weather here cannot make up its frickin' mind. Last week it was the 50s, this week it was in the 70s. I don't know what else to tell you. Also, my dad is working on some home renovations, so if you hear any construction noises, that's why. Now that we've got all that out of the way, today's video will be the third and final installment of my top 30 spookiest slash scariest slash creepiest mythological creatures to go with this theme of spooky season. Like with the previous two videos, links in the cards and in the description down below, these entries will be in no particular order, except for the number one spot for reasons that I'll get to later on. So without further ado, here is part 3 of my top 30 scariest mythological creatures, in no particular order. Number 10, Gorgon. Now, the Gorgons were 3 monstrous sisters from Greco-Roman mythology by name Stheno, or Stheno, whichever you prefer, Euryale, and most famous of all, Medusa. Many sources say that they were the daughters of the Titans Phorcys, god of the deep sea's hidden dangers, and Ceto, goddess of sea monsters, which, according to the Greeks, included, but wasn't limited to, sharks, squid, and whales. All 3 of them were described as very ugly, with claws, snakes for hair, and big dragon-like wings made of brass sprouting from their shoulders. However, Medusa was the only one with the stereotypical Gorgon curse, which is a face so ugly that looking upon it would turn you to stone. Now, the most famous interpretation of the story goes that Medusa used to be a beautiful woman and a priestess of Athena, goddess of wisdom, who was seduced by the sea god Poseidon. One night they had an adult nap time in Athena's temple, which back in those days was considered highly disrespectful. And when Athena found out, she punished Medusa and turned her into a monster. And her sisters, out of love and pity for her, shared her burden as well. Now, this is just my interpretation, but I'm fairly certain Athena would have punished Poseidon for his involvement as well, but she couldn't because A, he was a fellow god and therefore immortal, and B, he was technically her uncle, therefore technically her elder, therefore technically far more powerful than she was. So she probably couldn't touch him either way, even if she wanted to. I understand that that's messed up, but that's how it was back in those days. Far less well-known interpretations say that due to their parents being Titans, the 3 Gorgon sisters were pretty much monsters straight out of the womb, and Medusa just happened to be born with a power that her sisters didn't have, but just happened to be immune to. Number 9, Mummy. Mummies are a classic monster that technically originated in ancient Egypt. They were originally the corpses of Egyptians who were wrapped in linen cloths to preserve them from the elements. Nowadays, they're usually portrayed as members of the undead. Now, when something, or someone, brings the mummy back to life, either because of a curse placed on their tombs to protect against thieves and raiders, or simply a need for female companionship, the mummy will usually come back either as a human wrapped up in linen and or jewelry, or something more along the lines of a zombie wrapped up in linen and or jewelry. Number 8, Juro Gumo. A creature from Japan, the Juro Gumo is a yokai that usually takes on 2 different forms. On the one hand, the Juro Gumo can take the form of a beautiful lady who uses her feminine wiles to seduce men and lure them to her lair, where then she'll take on her true form, which just so happens to be an enormous Shelob-esque spider. Ugh. From there, she will usually take whatever prey she's lured into her web, and then, of course, have him for her next meal. Now, I'm not arachnophobic by any means, but I think any of you would agree that a giant spider in any event is unnerving, even if she also moonlights as a beautiful woman. Number 7. Zombie. Zombies are one of the more well-known creatures that have survived to the modern day, though there are other monsters who are arguably more well-known, but we'll get to those in a minute. Modern interpretations of zombies portray them as undead creatures that feed on the flesh of others, usually brains. They're sometimes brought about by a virus, sometimes by a curse, and, in the case of one of my favorite TV shows, a very dangerous mix of designer drugs and energy drinks. Number 6. Serpapard. From the sands of Egypt comes this creepy beauty. Serpapards are chimerical creatures that look mostly like leopards, but with long serpentine necks and heads, or as serpent-necked lions. Serpapard is a modern term, a fusion of the words serpent and leopard, as there is no recorded name for them in the ancient texts. Serpapards are suggested to have been considered symbolic representations of the chaos that reigned beyond the borders of Egypt that the pharaoh had to tame. Number 5. The Bakekujira. As I mentioned in my top 10 mythical creatures video, link up in the cards and in the description down below, the Bakekujira is a spirit from Japan that takes the form of a ghostly whale skeleton. They're said to be accompanied by strange birds and fish, and bring misfortune to those who catch sight of them. One spooky legend says that a lone fisherman spotted a whale from his boat and threw a harpoon at it to catch it. But the harpoon sailed straight through, and the Bakekujira revealed itself and floated away. I don't know about you, but if I were that fisherman, after witnessing that, at the very least, I think I'd probably need a change of pants. Number 4. Werewolf. Another well-known monstrous creature, werewolves, from the Old English words were, meaning man, and wolf, meaning wolf, also known as lycanthropes, from the Greek, meaning wolf person. Werewolves are creatures that were once human, but usually after being placed under a curse or through a bite or scratch from another werewolf, gain the ability to shapeshift into a wolf, or, especially in modern times, a half-human, half-wolf hybrid creature. However, there have been stories of men being turned into wolves as far back as ancient Greece. In one story, King Lycaon of Arcadia was visited by Zeus, ruler of Olympus, in human form. Lycaon decided to take it upon himself to test Zeus's godliness for some stupid reason, and served him the roasted flesh of his youngest son Nyctimos for dinner. When Zeus found out about this, he struck down the rest of Lycaon's sons with lightning, brought Nyctimos back to life, and cursed Lycaon, turning him into a wolf, or the first werewolf if you prefer. Perfectly understandable reaction in my opinion, if a little excessive. Number 3. The Set Animal. The Set Animal, or the Shah, is a creature that was considered the totemic animal of the Egyptian god Set, who was considered, among other things, the god of storms, the desert, chaos, and evil. His totem animal, as depicted in hieroglyphics, was unlike any known animal, so it would seem that the Shah only existed in the ancient Egyptian imagination. The Shah is usually depicted at rest, either sitting or laying down, but is sometimes standing or walking as well. The creature's distinctive features include a tail that is held stiffly at an angle, even when at rest, and often forked at the end, a slender canine body resembling that of a jackal or a greyhound, triangular ears, thinner at the base and wider at the end, and a head with a long nose, with the nose resting at a slight downward curve. The creature was also depicted as black or red in color, Though, considering red was Set's symbolic color, I wouldn't be surprised if his symbolic creature was of a bright red hue. Number 2. The Kuchisaki Ona. The Kuchisaki Ona is a Japanese urban legend, and one that is arguably as scary, if not scarier, than American urban legends. For this story, I would like you to picture in your mind that you're walking down an alleyway when you come across a woman wearing a surgical mask, which is fairly common in Japan, but for obvious reasons is becoming even more common around the world. The woman comes up to you carrying a pair of scissors or some other sharp and pointy object, and she'll ask you one simple question. Do you think I'm pretty? Now, there are two ways to go through with this. If you say no, she'll take whatever sharp object she's holding and stab you with it. If you say yes, she'll take her mask off and show that the corners of her mouth have been slit all the way up to her ears. Once she removes her mask, she will then ask, "Do you think I'm pretty now?" If you respond no, she will take whatever sharp object she has and stab you with it. If you say yes, however, she'll take the sharp object and slice your mouth open to resemble hers. You can try and walk away, but she'll just appear right behind you if you do. However, there are a couple of ways to escape her. Some say turn her question back at her and say, "Do you think you look pretty?" You could also give her an ambiguous answer like, "I don't know." You could say she just looks average. Or, randomly, you could just distract her by throwing money or candy at her. Number 1. The Vampire. I mean, was there ever any doubt this would be on this list? The vampire. What else could I say about them that hasn't already been told in books, movies, TV shows, and video games from this side of the world to the other? From Bram Stoker's Dracula, to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, to Castlevania, to Twilight, vampires as we know them have been in the modern eye for centuries. Now, the physical characteristics of a vampire, as well as their abilities and weaknesses, are varied yet consistent. Most of the time, they have fangs. They usually drink blood to survive. Sometimes their bite turns other people into vampires. Sometimes they're able to turn to bats. Sometimes they're weak to sunlight and garlic, etc., etc., etc. There's literally a whole entire Wikipedia article on the variety of these powers, traits, and weaknesses, and how consistent they are in the media. I'll put a link in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. And there we have it. That was part 3 of my top 30 scariest/spookiest mythological creatures, in no particular order. If you like this video and you want more, please give this video a like and subscribe down below so you don't miss any new videos. Also, if there are any other ideas you want to see in future videos, please leave your thoughts in the comments down below and it might just happen. Alright, well, that's all the time I have for this video, so I'll see you all next week with the first of 2 very spooky stories. See you then.